That's it. All right, brilliant. Cool. I have a favor to ask everyone. Please get up. We're going to practice our power poses today, okay? And they're different ones. Oops, did I just do that? Okay. If you want inspiration, I have a few for you. I like Wonder Woman, but there's the villain, the subway guy. He turns into a superhero too. All right, good, awesome. Before you sit down, I'll show you my favorite superhero pose. It's doable, people. Try that at a really important meeting and you'll get everyone's attention, I promise. All right, thank you. Sit down. Thank you so much. I'm going to be talking about superheroes today and your own kind of power to make a difference. I'm Sandra Gonzalez. I have always taken really different paths to get where I am today. I was a computer engineering student in the University of Florida, but I also wanted to look into other things, and I decided to go for secondary education as well as mathematics. So I actually got 3 degrees. And then as I finished university, I said, I'm never going to work for a technology company. It sounds so boring. And therefore, I went and worked for Scholastic while they were publishing Harry Potter. So it was actually really, really fun. This is in the United States because I helped build the website and come up with ideas and pretty much promote the books as they were coming. In fact, I like it now, but I didn't like the book so much back then. So they would give me the press releases to code because they knew I would never leak it to the press. So there you go. And then I decided to become a front-end developer. When I was doing the Harry Potter thing, I was an online producer. And as a front-end developer, I had a lot of fun, again, working for Scholastic. And given that I had an education degree, I decided to try becoming, a teacher, just giving back to the community. And I worked for one of the top high schools in the United States, in Miami. And that was very, very fun. I really enjoyed that. And then I moved on, went to Seattle, worked for Microsoft, helped them launch Bing. And I was UX program manager. That was my title. Funny enough, I have never done design, but my title had UX, and I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds kind of cool. And that's where I fell in love with UX. I realized that there was this discipline around understanding users, and I used to go into the lab and observe users and all of that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a user experience designer. Right around that time, I was taking a break to have my second child, moved to Europe, created kind of a few ideas, built a few Windows apps, why not? And with that, I kind of launched my own career into user experience design. I worked for Kwani, a travel company. I went to do some research in Hong Kong, Jakarta, and I was like, yep, I'm really, really liking this. And then I became a senior UX designer for Tuk Tuk. I'm going to pause there because I'm going to continue my own story as I go ahead and tell you about superpowers. All right, so enough about me. Let's think about you now. I want you to really remember that moment in your life where you really want to push yourself to the next skill. I really, really want you to think about that because we're going to be talking a lot about that today. What inspired you? What about not the skill, but just yourself as a person? What motivated you? What was that motivation? Did you ever experiment it in any way, shape, or form? So a lot of us do A/B testing and some sort of experimentation, but what about in your life? Did you try different things? So hold that thought, and let's talk about some superpowers. So today, I'll be talking about one of the superpowers I encounter. And just like Tony Stark, he has the arc of reactor in his chest and stuff. I have something that I have named the tri-action, or tri-ation, better yet. I like the whole idea of threes. Actually, the triple diamond was an awesome discovery for me today, so thank you for that, Simon. So there's another tree here, another kind of three things. What the triation superpower that I discovered is composed of three elements. It's inspiration, motivation, and experimentation, okay? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how they all come together to create amazing things. So when it comes to inspiration, I'm going to go back to my little story about being a senior UX designer for TalkTalk. So back at TalkTalk, I was just carrying on with my day, and the director of digital came up to me and said, "Sandra, you've done some Windows apps for kids, right?" And I'm like, I developed some apps. He goes, "Oh my God, I just got pulled into a meeting. Can you go to Barbican and cover for me?" And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? He's like, "Yeah, I'm supposed to be in this Dragon's Den, and I just can't make it, and I need someone to represent TalkTalk." And I said, "All right, whatever, yeah, I'll go." I go to a Barbican, and I find out that I sign up for this thing, which is Apps for Good. So Apps for Good is an amazing program that realize that we have to be really, really thoughtful about the next generation of makers that we are creating. And I absolutely fell in love with the concept. So that afternoon, I find myself in front of 10, 11, 50-year-olds giving me a pitch for an app that would do good in their community. How amazing was that? I was completely in love with it. So I went ahead and I started doing some research, and I learned that actually here in England, the legislation changed back in 2013, where children had to be taught about algorithms as young as age 5. Did you know about that? So children are being taught really, really early on about algorithms. What's really interesting, and going back to Simon's talk, is the emphasis is on coding, right? Triple diamond, last one, development. And as I was working with this program, it was quite clear that the program really wanted to do something different and not make it about coding, but make it about the complete process. So that's why they had this concept of experts. And they connect experts throughout the world to get on a Skype call into the classroom and talk about whether something is feasible, whether something is easy to test or scale, and so on and so forth. It's incredible, the ideas that came through. Many of them were some copyright infringement kind of thing, and then you had to go like, okay, so good start, but let's think about the artist that created that, and the teachers are like, yes, I've been telling them that that's a copyright infringement. So as an expert, you're supporting the teacher to deliver that message. So as this program kind of taught me that there were an amazing opportunity for the UX community to really get teachers and students and everyone that was not part of our industry acquainted with what UX design is, I realized that there was an opportunity and that we had to kind of mobilize a little bit, right? Because our discipline is not really that accessible to teachers and to a lot of people that can really benefit. And it kind of ties very nicely with Angela's talk. So any teachers in the audience right now? All right, anyone has trained a secondary or, primary or high school teacher as of today? Who's training these teachers? Right? And there are a lot of coding clubs, after school clubs, but it's all about the coding. Very little about designing. Great, so that's element number one. Let's talk about motivation. So I happened to be quite motivated at the time, and still are. But back then I was motivated by two very important things. The nonprofit sector. So as I mentioned, I've previously been a high school teacher. I really wanted to contribute to other causes. And I wanted to contribute in a way that wasn't just quitting my job and going into a charity. I just wanted to kind of understand what else was out there, because I felt like it was going to allow me to solve incredible challenges. I don't know how many of you have been in a situation at work where you're like, okay, yeah, we kind of solved that 2 years ago. We're just solving a different flavor of the same thing. So to me, there was a great opportunity to kind of throw myself at different things that wasn't my day-to-day job. The other thing that was important for me and motivated me was that I already kind of had a really clear understanding that I wanted to get into design leadership. So my path allowed me to say, what if I were to mobilize the UX community and lead them through volunteering work? Imagine, if I can convince people to design and volunteer, most likely I'm going to be pretty good at leading a team that gets paid to do what they do. So I thought that was an opportunity to really grow my skills as I was doing some leadership at work, but not really getting the title or the credit. So that was my motivation at the time. Now, going back to the third one, experimentation. All right? So this is actually an interesting one. By the time, I was motivated not only by what was happening with Apps for Good and the opportunity that I saw, but I was also motivated to kind of come up with my own business, which is training, actual training. I'm pretty sure some of you know me for that. So that actual license, I can help with some of the training. I also wanted to share the music from my country, and I want to kind of help launch my band into the digital social media. Real estate. So there were a lot of kind of side projects that were happening at the time. So I guess it was a really interesting time for me to do what our generation usually does when they have an idea and they think of pushing it forward. So what's the first thing we do when we have an idea and we think is going to work? Well, we create a startup, right? That's kind of what our generation is all about. Startup here, I realized that there was an opportunity and so on and so forth. But I felt like the typical kind of startup wasn't the right thing for me. I wanted to do something that would allow me not only to explore the other concepts that I had in front of me, but anyone that would help me would be also able to explore their own concepts. So as I'm thinking about this startup, I said, well, I'm not going to call it a startup. I'm going to call it an alternative startup. Because a lot of the things that I will learn, I can quickly pass on to someone else that can benefit from the learnings and learn themselves or teach me something. And then there was also the idea that, what if this goes really bad? I'm just going to put experiment on it, because that's a good way to say, well, nothing to see here. It was just experiment. Let's clean up and go. All right? So there you go. I thought of that and I said, well, okay, I'm going to start the alternative startup experiment. And that's exactly what I did. So the next slide, I promise, is one of the ugliest slides you've seen in this conference and maybe in a few conferences. So embrace yourself. In 2 days, I put together this website. I didn't know about the logo magic thingy, so logo joy. Anyways, I just had an opportunity to quickly look for some fonts and some ideas, and I said, it's okay, I'll just publish this website, and I'm going to start something, and I'm just going to start attracting interns, because I cannot do this whole thing by myself. So I went ahead and I did something, again, a little bit crazy, and that was to post about 3 different jobs in at startupjob.com, UK, startup, yeah, whatever. I wrote some job descriptions and I say, hey, join a startup, you're gonna learn, we're gonna teach you, it's gonna be fun, you can work from home, why not? And this is all with the interest of like growing your portfolio and just wanted to see what happened. Again, it was an experiment. And amazing things started happening. So, I don't know if you saw my kind of elements of a startup. I have Cafe Nero. Well, as I was contacting these people, I said, meet me at this Cafe Nero. I would usually ask more than 3 people to come at the same time. And then I will just tell them about the idea and tell them that by coming together and helping each other, we can really learn from each other. And that I had a few side projects. Keep in mind that one of them, the Windows phone apps, were quite mature, and there was press release and so on and so forth. So I kind of hooked them with that, and then I said, but we can do so much more. And it was incredible. It was an incredible experience. I attracted a lot of grads. I attracted a lot of people changing careers that wanted to get into design. I also kind of opened it up to like copywriting and graphic design and visual design and development. I just wanted to see what happened. I attracted a lot of stay-home moms. And stay-home moms that wanted to get back into the labor field. So it was an incredible opportunity to get to know a lot of people, but also an incredible opportunity to have conversations with completely strangers and try to understand what their superpower was. And a lot of times it was resilience. A lot of times was transferable skills from something they've done that can be used for some of the stuff of the projects that were coming together. So one of the things I really want you to do today is to really think about your superpower. What is your superpower? What makes you unique? What brings the project to kind of the next level? And how you also allowed other people to shine through their own superpower. So today I was asked what I thought collaboration was. And I said that it was the allowing the space for people to really shine through their superpower, to help them discover that superpower. And that was something I was really interested in at that moment. Okay, so there we go. Do think about it. And these are all the people I met in Nero. They look just like that. All right, so I had a few people sign up. It got to a point where I'm like, ooh, I better stop, because I was literally managing these people at night through Trello because it was working from home, right? And I would just assign some sort of reading or watch this video and try to implement this in this particular project. And that's kind of how we did it. So I had to make sure that I didn't sign up for too much at 3 in the morning. All right, so now we need a project. So I do have to say some of them, or most of them, were some of my projects, but then people started coming up with their own projects. And if I were to buckle them quickly, it was between educational apps, some training programs, and my music band. So that's a little bit selfish, but hey. People do need some training on being community managers. So, and then from those, we had some common themes, right? So all of them needed some branding, right? So there was one person that had decided to quit medical school. She thought her calling was definitely visual design, and she was super keen to develop some brands for her portfolio. Well, guess what? She created most of the branding for 5 different projects. Her portfolio looked amazing before she even graduated from uni. There were also needs around like marketing strategy, right? And that allowed us to, again, learn on one project and translate it to the other immediately. And then press releases were also necessary, so I attracted some copywriters as well. So there you go. We started to kind of move this machine, alternative startup experiment machine. The next thing that was super important was kind of a reason to care, an ammunition, a thing that would make people think, well, you know, if I were to do this, I can show, you know, I have something to show other than, you know, the portfolio, but, you know, something that goes farther than that. How many of you are familiar with open badges from the Mozilla Foundation? Okay. This is a concept they launched about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, and I find it quite interesting. So the Mozilla Foundation thinks that the way we learn and we're accredited for what we learn has to change. The whole concept of going to university is valid still, but think about what you learn in university and think about the things you know now, and think about what happened in between. So a lot of times you either self-teach yourself something, watch video, go take a little class, and so on and so forth. So the Mozilla Foundation thought that there was an opportunity to help people trace kind of their own learning through micro-accreditation, and that's what they call open badges. And I was completely fascinated by the concept because I thought that was a really good opportunity to bring that kind of accreditation to the alternative startup experiment. So here are open badges. Again, keep in mind that I have not hired any visual designer by the time I put this together. So I had one for just like kind of toolbox, kind of get up to speed with what we did. So of course you got to understand Trello and Azure and Chrome tools and AWS and so on and so forth. And then there were different tracks, and like the design track would allow you to get a style guide up and running, or contribute to a blog, or come up with an infographic, and so on and so forth. And all of these three elements allowed for the startup experiment to really take off. So these are the faces of some of the interns. These are the badges that some of them acquire, and these are some of the products or projects. The good news is that even though some of you may recognize that those three are my own projects, we had other projects. So the Three Island Studio actually comes from some of the help from not UX for Change, I'll get to that, the Alternative Startup Experiment. And they were doing educational technology. Same with Sasky Studios. They were really keen to kind of play with concepts around going around the world and collecting hearts and allowing children to learn about monuments through the world in a Unity game. By the way, the person that put this together had no training whatsoever in design or game development or anything 6 months prior to launching the App Studio. And then UX for Change came about from this alternative startup experiment. So that's the story around how we think of collaboration, but really pushing the limits. And it was a really interesting time in my life. I launched the concept of UX for Change in Talk UX 2015. One of the things we managed to do, because I had a team behind me, I took my whole speech and turned it into tweets. And as I was speaking at the conference, what I was saying was being tweeted at the same time, simultaneously. So it allowed for people to kind of immediately share some of the stuff I said. And unsurprisingly, I was the most tweeted speaker for that specific conference. So it was a lot of fun. But just like any experiment, you try something, it may fail, or it may work, and then you eventually put it away. So I've done all of this work. I managed to teach a few people a few skills, and now I knew what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do was to really focus on UX for Change. So as I talk about UX for Change, I want you to meet some of the heroes. This is Claire. The way kind of UX for Change kind of formalized after the conference is that we started a meetup in London. And my first meetup was about that challenge I told you, was about who's teaching teachers about design. I had a few people, a panel, and they were really passionate about it. And I have Claire come to me at the end, and she said, Sandra, that sounds amazing. However, I would love to help, but I'm scared of children. And I said, okay, that's no problem. Let me tell you something. Apps for Good, you're actually on Skype. Worst case scenario, if it gets too overwhelming, close the laptop, go ahead and blame the broadband connection. Done. But give it a try. And she said, I think I can do that. Well, next thing we know, she had become one of the experts of the year, had completely helped a team win, because one of the things Apps for Good does is that they identify kind of teams in different schools that would actually be able to launch their app in the App Store, because they partner with an agency that would actually build the idea. And she was in the Dragon's Den, and her team won, and it was an amazing experience. And it worked out. She was really, really happy to have been involved. But I realized that me contributing to Apps for Good was great, but it was only me. Me getting other people to kind of contribute was great, but again, it was only a handful of people. So what we did is we created a crowd-funded scholarship program. And we would actually invite teachers to this type of conferences to UX training, like the ones we take in our day-to-day jobs, because we thought that by training one teacher, we could impact hundreds of children's lives. And because of that, we won the Impact Award for Apps for Good in 2016. After that, I decided to start looking into other challenges. So remember the whole idea of the wicked problems? Well, we wanted some wicked problems now. It worked for teachers here in the UK. So we started to partner with a really cool nonprofit called Empower Hack. And they were focusing on refugee technology for women and children. I came across them in one of the MozFest, the Mozilla Foundation Festival here in London, and they were super keen to bring us on board. So one of the challenges we were solving with them was pregnant women in transit, and how they were actually going to figure it out if any symptoms was actually life-threatening. So that was very, very interesting because I've never been in a situation when I had to think of context that was so completely out of my day-to-day. So what we did is we had hackathons and we invited these SMEs. And the SMEs were extremely insightful. I mean, I walked into this hackathon with some ideas of what I wanted to do, walked out with a completely different understanding. So we co-designed, and we taught a lot of people how to co-design. So I want you to meet Tom. He has been a volunteer in Iraq. And when we walked into the hackathon, we had never considered the role that volunteers play in these type of situations, in moments of crisis. So he was extremely helpful for really thinking about how they can actually collaborate and help with the technology that we were trying to build. Hina, actually, she was the one that came up with the idea of building this app. So she's an obstetrician working for Doctors of the World, who has actually been in refugee camps and identified the opportunity to use technology in order to solve some of the challenges she faced. So one of the challenges that they actually see about 300 people a day, one doctor, 300 people in a refugee camp. So the triage aspect of anything is really important, and especially when it comes to pregnancies. So Her Baby, that was the app we were working on, was all about that. It was about triaging symptoms and helping mothers understand if that was something that needed immediate attention or it was just a normal symptom within the pregnancy. Maria, midwife working in a refugee clinic here they're in London, we're in Bristol, who help us understand how we can optimize questions about pregnancy for that particular context. So one of the things we looked into is, okay, what pregnancy apps are out there? And they're so fancy, and they're like beautiful pictures and really heavy, and when was your last period, and blah, 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 which makes total sense in this context. But when it comes to women in transit, there's no time for that. There may not even be any connectivity. There may not be any way to kind of have your own medical information stored. So it has to be within the context. And she was extremely helpful helping us understand some of that. We created storyboards, as you can see. We did paper prototyping, and everyone had a lot of fun. And there's a few developers in these pictures, and they're like, when are we going to code? When are we going to code? But within like an hour and a half, they didn't want to code anymore. They were just so entertained prototyping and building these storyboards. A few months later, I actually bumped into Maria, the midwife, at an airport, and she shared with me how life-changing it was to have been in this co-design hackathon. So that was really, really great that she shared that with me. And it was a great experience. We also were able to help other projects, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. Okay, so one of the things that has been really important for UX for Change is not to just give time to the nonprofit community, but also to give something to our very own community, to the UX community. So I want you to meet Rocio. She was a graphic designer who came to me in one of those events, and she said, Sandra, I really want to get into UX, but I don't know how to do the switch. And what I did is I paired her up with this particular project, which was an amazing project. So Christy and Kath were creating a media API with a collection of children drawings left in refugee camps. So Rocio was able to work on raising awareness of the impact of migration and exile that it has in children. And then she actually became a UX designer. Another way we give back to a community is by curating conferences like this one. We work with conference organizers and we curate to focus on diversity. And it's not just diversity as the person that's speaking, but diversity of themes. And also we go ahead and we coach some individuals that want to speak for the first time but don't have the confidence and feel like they're going to need to be handheld. And that's absolutely fine. So we give them the confidence and we just make sure that they're solving amazing problems. So I want you to meet Helen. She came to us with a lightning talk, a 5-minute talk. And after we saw the amount of thinking and the material, we thought it was amazing. And we proposed that she would do a 30-minute presentation. And she wasn't quite sure at first, but then she's like, you know what, I'll go for it. And her talk was one of the best kind of rated in that conference. Our conference involvement expands to even unexpected tasks. Last year, we volunteered at the Mozilla Foundation conference at MozFest, the world leading festival to for open internet movement. And you may wonder what we were doing. Did we give a talk? Did we facilitate a workshop? Nope. The mascot. We actually, and that wasn't me, I found out later that it was quite a difficult task, but we had someone from our committee, Nadine, brave enough to put on the Firefox suit, and she was the mascot. So I'm actually quite lucky today that Nomensa does not have a mascot. All right, so in all seriousness, what UX for Change does is identified opportunities to give to the nonprofit by creating new approaches to some of the challenges, helping them learn about human-centric design, and a lot of times UX designers stick with that nonprofit, so we do create an opportunity for pro bono work. And then they help us grow our portfolio and they help us connect with new human challenges. And we do all of this by networking, mentoring, and micro-training. So that is all well and fun, but then there is reality. So in 2017, things went a bit quiet for UX for Change. And it's all because my life kind of looked like this. So I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, I'm just gonna have to pull the plug. This is too much, there's too much going on. I was in charge of making sure that we had the venue, making sure that we had the people, sign-ups, blah, 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 the speakers, cancellations last minute, and it was quite difficult. But I got really lucky, and I met this person. She's from Bamboo Crowd, a specialized recruitment agency, and Naomi happened to we have mutual friends in Australia and just moved to London. And I explained what I was doing, but I also said to her, but you know what, I don't think I have time for this anymore. And she said, no way, this is an amazing project, let me help you. Again, collaborate. And I said to her, all right, let's do this. I am going to commit 30 minutes per week of my time to UX for Change. Everything else, I leave it with you by forming a committee of 5 people, of course, because I don't want to give everything to a recruitment agency. So we went ahead and we found different people from different backgrounds, from different levels, and everyone was in charge of something in particular. And then we had 100% success, and that's scientifically proven. But we had a pretty good year. So this year we have been helping carers who sometimes don't get a break. Sometimes years pass by. I mean, there's carers that it could be easily 7 years before they had a day off. Connect with owners of properties that are like holiday cottages, and that could just have the property empty and are happy to just let them stay for 2-3 nights so they can have a proper break. We help them develop some of the personality for their brand. We work with the Fritz Rovia Youth in Action. So this is an organization that keeps children away from gangs and really help them kind of think about what's the next thing in their life as they are growing through their teenage years. And what we did is we helped them with a challenge about signing up, because teenagers don't want homework. So building a video that sounds really fun is something that everyone wants to sign up for, but once they start collecting data, because the funders actually ask for data, teenagers go, ooh, maybe I don't want to be part of that. So how can we make it fun for them so they would get funded? We also work with Just Transcripts. So again, going back to the refugee theme, the whole idea of allowing people to record as they're being interviewed by the Home Office in refugee camps, and making sure that everyone has access to what's being said so that the Home Office can actually be accountable for not making things a little bit complicated. We are already planning 3 more events for the rest of the year. So that was one little moment in my life where I said, I cannot do this anymore, and something came up, a little bit of luck, and things have kind of revived. So right now we're almost hitting 2,000 members in the UK, and the amazing news is that on August 3rd, we're actually launching in New York City. So yay, we turned it around. So I'm really happy. So going back to the superpowers, I have met amazing people. I have helped them discover their superpower. They have helped me discover my superpowers. And I think it is a really good moment in our lives, wherever we are, to really think about that. How can we bring together a community to collaborate, to work on things we never ever worked on or experienced? How can we think about creating that as an opportunity for ourselves to push ourselves even farther? How can we be motivated and inspire and experiment around those things? So that's the story I have to tell you today. If you are curious to learn a little bit more about UX for Change, please send me an email. I'm looking for anyone that can think of anything, a sponsorship, leadership, just a helping hand on an event that wants to kind of help with the pizzas. Anything is welcome. And I hope you enjoyed my talk. So thank you so much.